Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of India Votes on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. A succession of rulers from the same family or line. That is what dynastic politics means. It is a phenomenon that we have seen right through the centuries, from the time of the emperors, kings and czars to modern day politics. Members from one family have been at the helm in Indian politics, either at the center or states, for a long time now. The baton of power has been passed on from one member of the family to the other across party lines. On the program today, we will look at present-day dynasties in Indian politics. The dynastic tradition of the Congress party has a long history, going back to generations of the Nehru-Gandhi family, whose members have steered the party's fortunes starting from the 1900s to the present day.
Of all the political parties in India, the term dynastic politics is most prominently associated with the Indian National Congress Party. The dynastic tradition refers to the Nehru-Gandhi family that has over generations held the reins of the Congress leadership. Applied to the Congress, dynastic politics also refers to the tendency of the party to appeal for voter support on the contributions that the family has made in the political field. The Nehru-Gandhi family's involvement with Indian politics started with Motilal Nehru in the early 1900s, when pre-independent India was still part of the British Empire. Motilal Nehru was the president of the Indian National Congress between 1919 and 1920, and for the second time between 1928 and 1929. In 1912, Motilal Nehru's son Jawaharlal Nehru became a notable figure in India's nationalist movement. After he completed his education at the Cambridge University, Jawaharlal Nehru became the General Secretary of the Indian National Congress in 1923. Nehru established his reputation as one of India's leading freedom fighters. In 1947, when the country attained independence, Nehru became the first Prime Minister of India. Nehru remained Prime Minister till his death in 1964. His daughter Indira married Feroz Gandhi, who himself was active in politics and was part of the Quit India movement. Indira Gandhi joined politics in 1958. She was appointed member of the Central Parliamentary Board of the Congress. After Nehru's death in 1964, she became the Prime Minister of India in 1966. Towards the end of her second term as Prime Minister, she declared the infamous emergency that saw many civil rights being curbed. Indira Gandhi was voted out in the 1977 general elections and staged a comeback, leading the Congress to victory in 1980 and remained Prime Minister until 1984, when she was assassinated. Indira Gandhi's younger son Sanjay became involved in politics during her stint as Prime Minister. Such was his clout that Sanjay Gandhi was believed to be Indira Gandhi's chosen successor to lead the Congress party. But his life was cut short when he died in 1980 in a helicopter accident. Indira Gandhi's elder son Rajiv Gandhi was inducted into the Congress in 1981. He became Prime Minister in 1984 after Indira Gandhi was assassinated. In 1989, the Congress lost power, and 2 years later, in 1991, Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated in a bomb blast. For many years after Rajiv Gandhi's death, it seemed the Nehru-Gandhi family's involvement with the Congress seemed to have ended. For many years, his wife Sonia Gandhi refused to enter politics, but party pressure eventually led her to joining politics in 1997. Initially as a member of the party, in 1998 she became President of the Congress, a post she held till December 2017, when her son Rahul Gandhi, who joined politics in 2004, assumed the post. Sonia and Rajiv Gandhi's daughter Priyanka Gandhi Vadra became the latest member of the Nehru-Gandhi family to join Congress when she was appointed General Secretary of the party 2 months before the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. She has been given charge of Uttar Pradesh East. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And joining me on the program today to talk about this, S. Srinivasan, senior journalist, Jatin Gandhi, senior journalist as well, and Professor Rajveer Sharma, political analyst. Thank you to all of you for joining me on this edition of India Votes. Professor Sharma, I'd like to begin the program with you. Let's look at the Congress dynasty now first, and look at how it came into being and how it evolved into what it is today.
See, two things which needs to be very clearly understood is that right from the days of independence, though even pre-independence there you were right that Motilal Nehru in fact became the president of the Congress for some time, and even during the independence struggle, the presidency of the Congress even though went to somebody else, it was only for a very short period of time, and there was a struggle to get that back by a certain family. But after independence, Nehru in fact made it almost a point that he trains the members of his family, and particularly late Mrs. Indira Gandhi. She was prepared by Nehru and groomed by Nehru, trained by Nehru, and even though she was not having much of an experience, but after Lal Bahadur Shastri's death, she assumed the office of the Prime Minister, though the syndicate at that time was under the misimpression that this dynasty would be merely in name and we will be able to run the government as per democratic norms of a party. But they were proved wrong in 1967 itself, when she became again the Prime Minister. She even split the party in 1969 for the sake of power, and did not listen to what the other members were saying, even on the issue of the presidential election. She wanted that a person of her choice should become the president. Particularly, she favored V.V. Giri, and for that purpose, she managed to have her own person in the office of the president. She was certain that there could be some challenges in the future, and therefore the person in the Rashtrapati Bhavan should be one who is more acceptable to her, or she is more acceptable to him. Now, the all other is history. You have already stated that after Mrs. Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi was not a willing kind of a person, but still the leadership was imposed on him for the sake of dynasty, and perhaps it was the compulsion of the Congress also that this dynasty could make them could keep them together, and that is how they preferred Rajiv Gandhi over others, though there were many claimants even after Mrs. Gandhi's death.
It's interesting that you brought that up, the word compulsion. What is it that led to this, Srinivasan? Was it compulsion really, or what is it?
If you are talking of Rajiv Gandhi's entry.
No. Generally, dynastic politics in the Congress itself. Why it has been associated with the Gandhi family right at the helm for such a long time.
Well, Gandhi family, of course, it's in focus because the largest number of politicians are perhaps from that family, and also the Congress party. There is one study which said that nearly 48% MPs and their sons and children get in Congress party. But let's not forget, it's not as if other parties do not have dynasty.
Absolutely, yes.
All political parties in India, you can take it from the top. It's not just Nehru family, it's Abdullah, the Shah, Mufti, the Devagowdas, the Ajmal, even Northeast, the Gogois, the Jogi, Chhattisgarh, then Shuklas earlier in Madhya Pradesh, then you have Shamacharan Shukla, Vidyacharan Shukla, then you can go to Naveen Patnaik, Biju Patnaik, then you can go to Tamil Nadu, Karunanidhi, his sons and daughter, so everywhere it's the same story, Devagowda, even the political parties which have come through a movement, TRS, which is in Telangana, even now their son is there coming up in Telugu Desam party. Actually, he took over from father-in-law now. His son is coming in. So, if you have to define dynasty as at least one member of a family coming from the previous generation, then you have spread evenly all over India. But Congress party is more in prominence because the largest number are coming from that, and this Nehru Gandhi family has more optically they are actually much more larger presence, and they had prime ministers, three prime ministers. The other thing is, the question is that I think the real question to ask is this dynastic politics, which is there, it's all across, is it beneficial or is it harming democracy?
Absolutely.
I think that's a question to be asked.
Yeah, that's what I was going to come to.
If you ask me a question, is this dynasty, they're all around.
So cutting across party lines, that's what I said in my introductory remarks as well. That is not just limited to this, but since you're focusing on the Congress party for the time being, we're just focusing on that, and then we'll move on to the other parties as well. So, this term dynastic politics, Jatin, why is it most prominently associated with the Congress? What is it really?
Because the Congress is the party with the longest history. It has had it has had 3 prime ministers. It's existed even before the independence. So obviously a longer legacy you are going to see, and in a business like dynasty, I mean, if a father is succeeded by a son or a daughter and then their progeny, so obviously you will see the longest string of dynastic politics in the Congress, obviously. So but it's not something that is restricted to the Congress. As the other parties come into being, create the history, they're also following the same route. It's not as if the BJP-led NDA does not have dynastic politics. Look at the Badals in Punjab. Prakash Singh Badal, Chief Minister, son, Deputy Chief Minister, daughter-in-law Minister at the center. Look at the TDP. The TDP was a part of NDA. Mr. Naidu and his son. Now they are, so they are there. And if it's not as if the TRS, if the TRS wants to join, the NDA post-election or pre-election, the BJP is going to say no to them.
Right. Yes, Professor, you wanted to add something?
In fact, I just wanted to intervene just for 2 things. One, that the other parties have some kind of a dynastic, the germs, if I can say germs. They may not be following the same kind of the form of dynasty as Congress has been practicing, and therefore this is no justification that if Congress is following dynasty, then other parties are also following dynasty. The question which was raised by my friend Srinivasan, why I think was quite valid, whether dynasty is in the interest of democracy or not. And I may add another one. In Uttar Pradesh also dynasty is there. In Samajwadi Party, the whole family is there in politics, and they have been either ministers at the center or in the states. So the question is as to whether, by saying that since other parties also have dynasty, therefore should we continue with this dynastic system? Would it strengthen democracy? Would it strengthen the society? Would it favor some kind of a developmental politics? In fact, unfortunately, if you look at even the dynasties across the world and even democracies, what you have found is that dynasts or the political dynasty have developed some kind of a vested interest in perpetuating poverty. And they have been frustrating the poverty reduction programs. They have been following more the kind of patronage politics. They have been following mostly the politics of welfare rather than politics of development, so that some client relationship develops. You give some kind of a loan waiver to Kisans, merely to say that all right, it is we who can do some relief work for you. So they may provide some relief, but what the ultimate aim of development is the Kisan meant to develop by such kind of politics? So therefore, the real issues of development, poverty reduction get into the background, and they try to push a politics which is more welfareist in nature, or which depends on distribution of largesse to some sections. So that is how, in this context, I think it would, if we look at the role of dynasty in a democratic system, then in fact, political dynasty is the antithesis of democracy. Dynasty and democracy do not go together.
Right. Right. Interesting. Yeah. So, Srinivasan, so that having been said, what has been the success rate of dynastic politics in this country, And is there place and space for dynasties in a democracy?
Yeah, so before coming to that, I just want to highlight two news points which has actually happened today. Very interestingly, in Arunachal Pradesh, which is going to assembly elections along with parliamentary elections, about half a dozen MLAs have quit BJP and about 25 in entire Northeast. The protest there is 3 members of Pemu Kandu family have been given tickets. So they are protesting and they are saying that BJP said that they won't promote dynasty, first nation, second party and third individual. But then here the individuals are being promoted. So there is a protest happening there. Cut across to Tamil Nadu. Today, O. Pannirselvam, who is the deputy CM, was campaigning for his son. And he introduced his son and said there's nothing wrong being a dynast. If this person is, this boy is elected by the people of this constituency, it is justified. That's what he said. So I thought I'll just flag it. And you have another biggest dynast, Priyanka Gandhi, campaigning somewhere in Uttar Pradesh. So you have these examples. So it's not as if it's a reality. And now the question is whether it is helping democracy, whether you ask me the success rate. I mean, empirically you have to study whether dynasts have a success rate or not. But there is one particular point being said. I think we need to look at this issue more, if you look at more granularly. Perhaps is some kind of a quota kind of protection which some, say like minorities or even oppressed classes or backwards, socially backward. I'm not trying to justify at all. Do they get it? For instance, if there is a Paswan and his son again contests from a reserve constituency, the seat is in a way within that community. In fact, there is a study which I don't know how, it's a New York based professor which I just came across. I was surfing the net before coming here. It said that the probability of a sitting MP and if he is a dynast, coming back if he belongs to forward caste is 1.3 and for a backward it is 2, which means those communities have some kind of unwritten reservation. I mean, obviously, this doesn't sound very, this doesn't, but that also reflects the complexity of Indian politics.
Yeah, true. It's a very interesting point that you raised. That having been said, Jatin.
So the winnability.
Yeah.
So it also reflects the voter choice.
Yeah.
So if a dynast, first of all, I just want to clarify that I was not justifying dynasty in Congress. What I was saying is that it's a disease that afflicts all. There is a Ramvilas Paswan in the cabinet today, whose son is also an MP. So what I was saying is, so it's basically the voter choice which really. So if a dynast were to contest an election and win, then really is it a studio discussion that is going to decide what should be the future of dynasties or not?
Professor?
While I agree with what our friend is saying, two things I think I would like to place here. One, that dynasty in a democracy is a form of political inequality.
Absolutely.
It promotes political inequality. It restricts the access to power of other people. And therefore, so far as the winning of a dynasty is concerned, given the opportunity, even others may win. It is not merely the individual who wins the election. It is the party which also contributes a lot in winning the election. It is also the ideology of the party that contributes to winning an election. So therefore, whether it is Rahul Gandhi or it is somebody else in his place in Amethi, the Amethi people should be given a choice even other than the dynast, so that they can really decide as to whether they prefer only the dynast or the other people also. The chances, when you talk of youth, why only Priyanka Gandhi? In the name of youth, the other youth also could have been given the chance to campaign. So therefore, here I am saying, what I am trying to say is, it is their choice as to who they field for campaigning. But just for the sake of argument, I am saying that by the entry of Priyanka Gandhi might have restricted the opportunity for some other youth to campaign and to really internalize the kind of ideology which the Congress stands for. Number one. Number two, as I said, that as economic inequalities and the income inequalities are bad for the society, they cannot create an egalitarian society if the economic inequalities exist in any society. So therefore, people may use these income or economic inequalities to perpetuate themselves into power. Similarly, the political inequalities also are not good for the society. Everyone should be given an equal chance. Now, to add one another point, that there are some parties who are fighting for, and he's right that in some states there could be protests to. Now, this is a good sign that if somebody is protesting that, look, this is not a good practice, it means that people of the country are awakening and they are challenging the dynasty, or they are challenging the parties also who are working for any kind of dynasty. But at the same time, I would also say that if the son of a politician is for a long period of time working in the field of politics, right, then he should not be or she should not be denied the kind of opportunity to enter into politics merely because he happens to be a son of a politician, right? There's a difference. When Rajiv Gandhi was brought as a prime minister, he did not have even, he did not work even for a day in politics or in political party. That is where the problem arises. The two differences are, if a person has worked amongst the people, if he has worked for even in some kind of a civil society organization for the people, betterment of the people, if he has some experience social and political, there is no harm even if he is a son of a politician. But similarly, I'm sorry to say that even Rahul Gandhi did not have much experience when he was imposed the post of such a high post of a president of a national very big party in the country. I have no grudge. I mean, it is, again, I'm saying that it is their choice whom to make the president. But it is the continuation of dynasty in that sense, that nobody else, either we or nobody else. Now, this kind of politics should be discouraged. It will not be in the interest of democracy if we, in fact, at least the educated class owes it to the nation to oppose any kind of a trend which is not in the interest of democracy.
Right. So who's going to ensure this? The professor is suggesting that, dynastic politics and democracy don't go hand in hand. It's not good for democracy is what he's suggesting. But who's going to bring about the change? Because see, at the end of the day, Indians go by the name and the lineage as well. And that's something that we've seen right from the beginning.
Yeah, obviously the change has to come through education, and it's the voter who's finally going to decide. See, the thing is, if you notice 2014 campaign, when Modi became the prime ministerial candidate for the first time, obviously there was a lot more emphasis on the fact that he's not a dynast. He has no such thing in the, probably that helped him, because even today when they refer to, they say, why one family? Why not to him? So that it in a way was advantageous to him, this very fact. You see, the issue is that democracy, by the way, it also came so that the feudal structure goes, the landlords go, the kings and other people give way to, representative democracy. That's what it is. But, the politics in India has been through a transformative stage. So many states, for instance, if you take Madhya Pradesh, if you take Orissa, there are many states in which you still have feudal families ruling. And then when a dynasty comes, the entry barrier is very low. Also, the other fact we have to remember that Indian elections are quite a bit dependent on money power, and the finances also are an important aspect. So the other unfortunate thing is that political parties which come through a movement, also in their second generation or later, kind of degenerate into dynastic politics. So that's another thing. So I do agree with Professor that we need to make a distinction, that it is not that we should shut off completely any dynasty. Just because he is a son or a daughter of a politician, he should not be given any entry, because as a journalist's children or a doctor's son or an engineer's son, even he has or she has a right to get in. But then how do they get in? Do they get it just because the father is something, or they also, create their own space by doing some kind of work? And that's the thing which people have to see. I mean, that's what gradually should come up.
Right. Jatin, that's a very interesting point. You might not have started as a dynasty, but as things go along.
Yeah.
You end up being
Which
a
is the
dynasty.
case with the Samajwadi Party or the Akali Dal.
Because at the end of the day, when someone is in control, someone is in power, he or she doesn't want to let go.
Yeah, basically, the Congress, when it says it does not have a choice other than the Nehru Gandhi family, it's because the way Indira Gandhi started weakening the Congress from 1969 onwards, that the culture, the earlier model was that regional satraps were strong and they together held up the Congress party, which was the largest party. But eventually it came down to the point that sycophancy became the primary qualification in the party to move you several notches up. So if you look at Rahul Gandhi, as he said that the time that you take to skip several rungs on the ladder, March 2004 Rahul Gandhi is introduced to the electorate from where he used to contest. April he contests and he comes to Parliament, and then he becomes a General Secretary in 2009, and then Vice President and subsequently the President of the party. Indira Gandhi, 59 she became the Congress party president, and 66 she was Prime Minister. Rajiv Gandhi did not have to, he was not interested in politics, he was doing something else where, his brother's sudden death brought him into politics, and when his mother was assassinated, he was suddenly propelled to the position of Prime Minister. So that's true. It's absolutely correct that dynasty, and this is not true just for the Congress party. Whether it's the TDP or the TRS or the SAD or the SP. So dynasts are promoted out of turn. There is no doubt about that.
Right. A lot has been said about several of the other regional parties as well. We'll talk about all those regional parties and other dynasts in Indian politics on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Watch In Depth with me, Tina Jha, at 6 p.m.
सुंदरता कोरिया के लोगों की जीवन शैली में शामिल है। सुंदरता उनके मन में है और सुंदरता उनके हृदय में है। मैं हूं अखिलेश सुमन और अभी हम हैं सियोल के ब्यूटी वैली में। हम आपको दिखाएंगे क्या है ये ब्यूटी वैली और क्या होता है इस ब्यूटी वैली में।
तो लेजर का प्रयोग हुआ मेरे चेहरे पे। माय फेस वाज कन्फ्रंटिंग विथ लेजर।
Welcome back. You're watching India Votes on Rajya Sabha television. I'm Frank Pereira. Well, over to Bihar now, where in 2018 a rift within the Yadav clan came to the fore after Lalu Prasad Yadav's eldest son, Tej Pratap Yadav, resented his younger brother Tejasvi being made Lalu's successor. Lalu Yadav had overlooked the principle of primogeniture that has determined succession in India's political dynasties for decades. When the Grand Alliance comprising RJD, Janata Dal United and the Congress swept to power in 2015, Lalu Yadav had his younger son Tejasvi Yadav appointed Deputy Chief Minister, making it clear that power would remain within the family if not with the elder son. Meanwhile, in Uttar Pradesh, another Yadav clan saw a fight for control in 2017 with Mulayam Singh Yadav's brother Shivpal Singh Yadav and son Akhilesh Yadav had a bitter feud ahead of the 2017 Uttar Pradesh election. Akhilesh Yadav, who was the chief minister of the state at the time, ultimately trumped his uncle. When Mulayam Singh Yadav first projected his son as the face of the Samajwadi Party, little did he know that two centers of power would emerge soon, Shivpal Yadav in the party and Akhilesh Yadav in the governance structure. All right, then we'll continue our discussion here in our studio right now. Professor, how are the dynasties or the political dynasties in the northern belt, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, different from the others?
No, I think two things should be taken into account and should be taken cognizance of. One, why and how the dynasties, political dynasties survive in a democracy. And I think if you look at the regional parties turning into dynasties somewhere, whether it is Uttar Pradesh or it is Bihar, or even in Tamil Nadu or in other states, you will find that these dynasties have emerged out of certain factors. One, when the political party has become a pocket borrow of a certain family. Then in such kind of parties where there is a lack of democracy, where there are no elections, and they survive on the kind of their own power, and they keep control over the party in such a way that no other person emerges as a challenge. So there comes the dynasty. Secondly, if the political party family, the dynastic family, has become a matter of pride for a certain caste or a certain community, then also the dynasties emerge. I am making a theoretical kind of statement, and they emerge because of the kind of pride which a certain section or a certain caste or a certain community feels out of it. For example, both in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, the RJD or the SP represent both these factors which I was talking about, that firstly the parties are pocket borrows, and secondly they have become some kind of a pride of a certain caste or a community. Similarly, if you look at even the Congress has always tried to combine the prime ministership as well as the presidency of the party, because they want to have the control over not only the government, they simultaneously want to have a control over the party as well, so that no other kind of a challenge arises and the dynasty survives and dynasty sustains itself for a longer period of time. Now, having said that how they emerge and how do they survive, so far as the difference is concerned, I don't find much of a difference, except that these parties have shown some signs of challenge and bickerings from within. So therefore, even the dynasty can have some kind of a challenge. If frustration survives within the competitors of the clan of dynasts, for example, in Samajwadi Party or even in RJD, you find some feeling of being either neglected or deprived of power, that look, this man has been promoted more by Laluji, and therefore why should I not? Now this kind of thing will come sooner or later, even because that is what the beauty of a democracy is, that sometimes either the voter or the dynasts themselves may compete as to why they may challenge the authority of one dynastic dominant leader and the other.
Right. That having been said, Srinivasan, is it easy for someone really to come through the ranks and challenge some of these dynasts?
Well, it's actually difficult. If you look at the various history, if you further want to look at what has happened, unfortunately, the electorate also seemed to prefer inheritance. For instance, Shiv Sena, it was between the cousin and the son. Father preferred the son. Politically, cousin was more active, but then the mantle went to him. Tamil Nadu, it's actually between Stalin and Vaiko. Vaiko seemed to be a better candidate, and he should have been the true inheritor, but then he was sidelined and Stalin was promoted. Though Stalin has been in the party, he's not brought down as parachuted down, he has been there for quite some time, but then the preference was always there. So there are innumerable examples where the immediate progeny is preferred over somebody who's equally good and rising up in the ranks. So that's where the degeneration of the politics takes place. The leadership, the first generation leadership has the responsibility to continue with the kind of messaging which they have done before coming to power, and then post power the way they behave. But unfortunately, that's what's been happening over a long period, and it's not an immediate one. It's been happening for a long time. So the thing is, how does one overcome? So there are only a few examples where political parties without any previous record have come. There are only two such examples. One is TDP, which came and then came to power within, I think, within 11 or 12 months. The other is Aam Aadmi Party, So there are only few such examples. Otherwise, like Jatin also said, the sustainability in power is also seemed to be linked in some ways to dynastic politics.
Does that also lead to degeneration, really, as far as the entire party itself is concerned?
It certainly, because you see, the other issues kind of are overlooked. But fortunately now in India, after so many years now, last 2 general elections, the issues are now shifting more to economic issues. Of course, there are emotive issues, nationalism, religion, caste, those are there. But then there is also quite a bit of discussion which has started on economic issues. The other example I would like to point out here is, the left parties, probably they keep out of this. They don't get into any kind of, because they have a certain structure and they follow that. But unfortunately, they are nowhere in the scene. I mean, they don't seem to have a kind of appeal just on the basis of the issues they raise. Somewhere, so the other thing the politicians have figured out, if not a dynasty, go for personalities, which could be film, which could be other performing arts. So that's another thing. Yeah.
So name and lineage at the end of the day, something that I was speaking about earlier as well, Jatin Gandhi, as far as the Indians are concerned, makes a difference. And because, they have a sense of feeling that, it's a tried and tested commodity. Is that what's happening really as far as some of these dynasts are concerned?
See, basically, based on what Srinivasan was saying, first I'd like to add a very interesting example to the son versus nephew, or, like in SP, the brother versus son. So, in the Akali Dal, Prakash Singh Badal's nephew, who was believed to be more competent than the son, Manpreet Badal, eventually went and formed his own party. Then he's now in the Congress and now the finance minister, while Mr. Badal sits in the opposition. So, that's one example. Now, we must take 2 steps back. He mentioned the left. So what happens in, essentially in family-run parties is that, the dynamic of running or controlling power in a party is such that people keep the secrets of, the intrigue of politics very close to their chest. So they are likely to share these secrets with someone they trust the most. So it obviously tends to be somebody from the progeny in such dynastic parties. So that's why we see this, kind of thing, that a son is promoted over, even within the clan, a son will get promoted over, another, sibling, or a lesser deserving or less politically astute sibling.
Right. Now, taking the discussion forward now, and let's concentrate a little bit on the parties itself. Professor, as far as some of the parties are concerned, are, dynasts really an asset or a liability for the party?
No, so far as the party politics is concerned, I think there are evidence enough that the dynasts are proving to be assets to the parties rather than the liability. And you take Congress, for example, as I said in the beginning, that Congress, the dynasts have proved to be a kind of the force which keeps the Congress united. Otherwise, Congress could have gone into pieces much earlier. Similarly, even in other regional parties, you find that they provide some kind of a basis of motivation to other people. But at the same time, the question which I am trying to raise right from the very beginning is whether this kind of the politics which may serve the party, does it serve the nation? That is the issue. You may serve the party, you may sustain the party, you may strengthen the party, you may keep the party together, but is it serving the nation? Is it serving the people? You may take pride in the struggle for freedom, right? And genuinely too, that if the Congress has contributed in the freedom of the country, nobody can deny that. But the kind of the contribution that was made by Congress, say before independence or even after independence for some time, now will it really be and should it be the basis of perpetuating dynasty in the name of lineage, or what you say, the inheritance, which they say that it is our freedom struggle that we contributed. Now the question that comes is whether we are able to provide some kind of the relief to the poor. are we really in a position to empower the poor? By sustaining or strengthening the party, it may lead to further consolidation of power, concentration of power, and that perhaps would be prejudicial to the interest of democracy and development of a country.
Right. So, what the professor is suggesting, Srinivasan, is that, when you look at dynasties and, dynastic politics and dynastic parties, they always tend to put themselves first and the nation second. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, obviously, so when a dynasty comes, obviously the winnability becomes a factor. Then, the dynasty also starts looking at other candidates who can win an election in those kind of issues. So, obviously, the issues take a back seat and promoting one's own family comes before. But, like Jatin also said earlier, the real challenge was with the Congress party, which was the longest tenure. The real example is Gandhi. Gandhi had 4 sons and then their children are all over, but none of them have become a dynasty. Some of them are actually intellectuals in their own right, political activists in their own right, but they have never actually tried to come to power politics. So, the real responsibility in a way was with Congress party to nurture the democracy post-independence in a manner that it grows. Unfortunately, they didn't set a good example. Like he correctly said earlier, Congress itself was a coalition of so many interests and so many leaders, and the regional leaders are very powerful and they were institutions in their own right and they have control over the regions. Over a period of time, all this was demolished just to concentrate power in one hand. Unfortunately, this example has been imbibed by other political parties which even came through movement. Those parties which came opposing the very fact, they themselves became a kind of a mirror image of what they brought in all the bad elements of and then adopted themselves. And so that's because the politics is still, the way I think the whole electoral process, where it's very much dependent on money power, very much on issues, the caste still plays a very important role, as compared to development. I'm not bringing in the issue of nationalism here because it's different and because I don't want to bring in that. But of course, that debate is more because here the BJP insists that nation first should be the example. That's why I think that debate is coming. But even in a party like BJP, 15% are dynasty MPs. So if you look at the ticket distribution, even they are doing it. So obviously, as the democracy deepens, one expects that this goes away, and merit or the performance of a politician really matters.
Right. All right. On that note, yes, Professor.
Just one.
Yeah.
That Indian electorate, in fact, is maturing so much that even the dynasty may be defeated. Mrs. Gandhi was defeated herself, as she was a sitting prime minister, incumbent prime minister, and was defeated. Rajiv Gandhi was defeated in 1989. The party did not come into majority. Similarly, it is not necessary that the dynasty, in fact, will prove to be very effective always. If the voter wants that their interests are not being served, they can teach a lesson and bring the dynasty out.
Right. All right. We'll slip into another break on the program right now. We'll look at some of the dynasts from southern part of India on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Watch The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira, at 6:30 p.m.
नई तकनीक, नई सोच और समाज में उनका योगदान। आइए मुलाकात करवाते हैं आपकी उन व्यक्तियों से जिन्हें 2019 में देश का सर्वोच्च नागरिक सम्मान यानी कि पद्म सम्मान मिला है। देखिए सम्मान सिर्फ राज्यसभा टेलीविजन पर। Enter the majestic forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan and you'll come across the Jaipur column. A gift to the Viceroy from Savai Madho Singh, the Maharaja of Jaipur, to commemorate the creation of the new capital. The 145-meter high column is crowned with 6 pointed crystal stars on a bronze lotus, and inside the stone shaft runs a steel tube which weighs a little more than 5 tons. The base of the column has text conceived by Lord Irwin and Sir Edwin Lutyens inscribed on it.
Tales that inspire. Stories of social change. A salute to diversity. Promoting public discourse. Events that motivate. Inspiring the innovative spirit. Watch Rajya Sabha television documentaries.
Welcome back. You're watching India Votes on Rajya Sabha television. Well, dynastic politics is prevalent in southern India too. In Tamil Nadu, there is the DMK and AIDMK, while Andhra Pradesh and Telangana have their share of dynasties too. The Dravida Munnetra Kalagam is led by Karunanidhi's son, MK Stalin, who reached the top after a bitter battle with brother Alagiri. With his elevation to the top job, Stalin became only the second president of the 69-year-old party after his late father and former Chief Minister M. Karunanidhi. For the upcoming Lok Sabha polls, the party has fielded children of top party leaders, ensuring that several next-generation leaders enter the fray this time. This includes M. Kannimodi, daughter of late M. Karunanidhi, who is contesting Lok Sabha elections for the first time. With her second tenure as a Rajya Sabha MP ending in June this year, she has now decided to face the electorate. The Dravida Munnetra Kalagam has also given tickets to the sons of party treasurer Durai Murugan, former minister Arkot Veeraswamy and ex-minister Ponmudi. Over in the ruling AIADMK, Deputy Chief Minister and Party Coordinator O. Pannirselvam's son, Ravindranath Kumar, will make his debut from Theni constituency. Manoj Pandyan, son of party leader P.H. Pandyan, is also in the fray, as is leader Rajan Chellappa's son, Rajan Satya, who will fight elections from Madurai, where his father served as mayor. In a democracy, dynastic politics ideally has no place, but politics in India is run on the back of names and reputations of leaders rather than those of political parties. In such a scenario, is it really easy to let go of dynasties and promote those who do actual groundwork in constituencies? Well, that is what we've been discussing here in the studio over the last 45 minutes or so. Srinivasan, a thought on the dynastic politics in South India?
Well, again, it's almost the same. It mirrors what's happening in the north. There's no difference between north and south. But there is one distinction which we have to make here in the case of the Dravidian politics there. DMK came to power and then it's come through movement. Karunanidhi's two sons, Alagiri and Stalin, both were in politics. Alagiri was actually handling one part of the state, Madurai and around the area, whereas Stalin was more from the youth wing. But you have to grant it to him that he's been in the party for quite some time. He has risen through the ranks. And the structure of DMK is such that even the district party heads are very powerful. Even the decision making, though Karunanidhi was a tall leader and he took his own decisions, it wasn't as if he wouldn't consult these district satraps. He had a certain structure and that was followed. But again, like elsewhere, it has degenerated over a period of time. The battle broke out between the two brothers. And then even Vaiko rose from the ranks, and he was one of the most powerful orators, but he was sidelined. He had to leave the party and float his own party. And then the two sons fought, and finally, Stalin emerged, because obviously he had a better grip of the party. And here it's not as if Stalin grabbed power because he was close to father, father preferred among the two sons, between the two sons, him. It wasn't like that. He actually had a much better grip, and then he managed to upstage his brother. So that's the scene in as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned. But you have the Devagowda in Karnataka, his son, the two brothers, and there have been power struggles, but one son obviously has become a CM, and he has come ahead of the other one. You have in Andhra Pradesh, I think it has just begun, because it was largely Congress which was ruling. Now TRS and TDP have come. TDP has been ruling for quite some time, but then the next generation of both the leaders have come there. So it's still to pan out how it goes. But these are the large political families. In Orissa, you have Naveen Patnaik. He's a leader in his own right, but then again he had an advantage. So like Professor said, one has to look at these dynasts also very closely. How much they have worked their way up from the ranks, and how much they have been parachuted. So the people, I think, really resent when the parachuting happens. When a leader is parachuted just because he is son or daughter. But no one can deny the fact that there is an urge to carry on the legacy of the father to son, and the electorate, possibly because they're familiar, and probably they prefer. But then there is also this politics of patronage still continues in India. So if you were to ask a question, election manifestos, don't they matter? Don't the political parties promise policies and issues rather than this? Unfortunately, even that has deteriorated to a level that if the Tamil Nadu political party brings out manifesto, people first look for the freebies.
Right.
So that's the nature of politics.
Yeah, sure. That having been said, Jatin, so what is the future of dynastic politics in this country? Here to stay?
The people will decide, the voters will decide. They will vote out dynasts who are useless, and they will continue to show their faith in people who deliver. It's very simple. I mean, what dynasty gets you, it gets you an entry ticket. It gets you a few rungs ahead of everyone else. Then you have to start proving yourself to a very large extent. Of course, as you move along, the longer a legacy of a party of a dynastic party gets, more para-dropping happens. So, the southern parties that he mentioned, all of them have come out of movements. So there, even for a dynast, after getting entry, the person would have to work his or her way up, the ladder.
Right.
But where in parties which have enjoyed absolute power, like the Congress, things come easy. But we've seen a phase now in the last 5 years where all the dynasts in the Congress have also had to prove their mettle. Sachin Pilot, who's Rajesh Pilot's son, he's Deputy Chief Minister now. He's worked hard for 5 years there. Jyotiraditya Scindia has been given assignments. So all these people are working on the ground.
Right. Professor, close the show for us with your concluding
in
remarks.
fact, I would like to say again two things. One, that it makes a very interesting kind of a study so far as Indian case of political dynasty is concerned, as to what exactly has been the outcome of the political dynasties. For me, if you take me as a person, then I would say that political dynasties have always been found to be involved mainly after 1967, involved in acts of corruption, wealth accumulation. You take whether even Karunanidhi and his family was accused of corruption many a time. Similarly, in Uttar Pradesh, SP party has been accused of being involved in corruption many a time. The RJD has been accused of being involved in corruption. Congress has been accused right from the days of Jeep scandal till date in corruption. So therefore, the dynasties are prone to increase their own property and self. Then the nation comes second. So therefore, that in fact is being now given attention to by the voters. And many a time there have been examples when the dynasts have been defeated.
Right.
In Tamil Nadu also, DMK has been defeated many a time. And even Congress has been defeated many a time, as I said earlier also. So the voter is becoming mature. They can distinguish between those who want to serve and those who want to protect themselves.
Right.
So that kind of maturity is coming to the voter, and I think the dynasty has no future.
All right. On that note, then we'll call it a wrap on this edition of India Votes. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.